Hi, I'm Em.
And my name is Bea.
And this is
Fangirls Anonymous. A quick warning, this podcast is not for kids.
We get into some pretty explicit stuff.
But if you're still with us and into that, welcome. Hey, Em.
Hey, Bea, how's it going?
It's going pretty nicely. How about you?
I'm feeling loopy today for some reason. But, you know, everybody has those days, right?
Probably.
That was not a Hannah Montana reference, but if anybody got that, you are my age. Anyway, what are we doing today?
We are going to talk about some tropes, specifically ones that we either quite like, perhaps even love, and those that we really could just not our favorite.
Are you excited? Because I am.
I'm excited to talk about them because I feel like we're going to have some really fun discussions about, kind of like with Squick, like where the line lies, because it's not as straightforward as it sometimes seems.
Definitely, even though trope names tend to be very specific, and I will be getting into those very specific tropes. I love talking about our opinions. I find talking about tropes is very fun, so I hope that whoever's listening to this also enjoys it as well, just as much as we're enjoying it now. So, what is a trope? We have been using that term for all of the episodes, almost all of the episodes, I'm sure, so far, and we probably should have defined it earlier than now, but this is just as good as any episode to do it. Merriam-Webster defines it as a common or overused theme or device, or a cliche. And a lot of people know the term cliche. Trope is also widely considered the term to use in a cliche, of cliches in TV shows, movies, media, books, that kind of thing. Story, I guess.
Yeah, and I feel like cliche comes with sort of a negative connotation, something to be avoided, whereas a trope feels more neutral. Like, it is a cliche in that it has been used time and again, but it's not necessarily something to be avoided. It's just a convention, sometimes of a genre or of a story, something you see commonly.
Yeah, and they can be hated, loved, or kind of that middle ground. Like, sometimes this is useful, sometimes it's not. And I think that's why we decided to kind of use this framework for this episode, as somebody talks about their love, somebody talks about their hates. You know, I think it's going to be fun to listen to when it comes to that stuff. But yeah, tropes are useful. That's why they exist. But some of them suck. And we're going to be talking about those later. Okay, my favorite tropes. Let's just get this one out of the way. Hurt comfort. I am a whore for hurt comfort. Everybody knows it by now if you've listened so far. Hurt comfort's very, it's what it is. Somebody gets hurt in a pairing, usually in a pairing. Somebody gets hurt, and then the other person comforts them. The hurt could be a cut on a finger or being tortured for a couple months. Like, anything from those ends and in between, that's could be hurt, or even death. Like, that could also be a hurt.
But, and it doesn't necessarily have to be physical either. It can be like your character A's parent died and character B comforts them. That's
true. There are probably some psychological implications you can make about me as a reader because of how much I love hurt comfort, but it doesn't mean I just don't love it. It's lovely. You know, some people like to assume the people who love hurt comfort were hurt in the past and weren't comforted. But yeah, it's still great. Anyway, a couple others that I really love. I love it when fics have ghosts. It's called the ghost trope. That's just really fun. I also really love past life tropes. Anything having to do with past life stuff. Super duper fun.
So like reincarnation.
Reincarnation, I actually believe in it, so that's just like part of my life, but I also love reading it in fic. It is so fun and interesting, and I wish it kind of happened more often in fic. I haven't really come across it too much. It's not like a coffee shop AU. There's not like the one reincarnation fic every fandom has.
But there are fandoms that have a ton, like that one fandom with a ton, like Merlin.
Very true, and I love Merlin, so that goes to show you how much I love reincarnation tropes. Magical realism, I will always read a good magical realism fic. Like, that's fun.
Yeah, I talked about that in our last episode, and there just isn't enough of it in my opinion, but that's just because I don't feel like there's enough magical realism in general. Like, it's good stuff in every form.
Enemies to lovers trope is really fun. I love the road in which they were enemies and then they were lovers. So I found this quote, this post on Tumblr. I wanted to read it out loud. Buckle up. Enemies 2, I accidentally came across you while you were vulnerable and scared, and I'm not a total asshole, so I tried to help you. 2, accidental mutual uncovering of softer sides and vulnerabilities. 2, I can't be mean to you anymore, not out of pity, but because it would feel weird betraying that brief truce we had. 2, fine, I'll make an effort to be nice to you now, I guess. 2, actually, now that we're not actively hating each other, you're not so bad, I guess. 2, I think we're friends, but I'm not going to say that because I'm afraid you're not going to feel the same way. 2, oh, you also think we're friends? Great. 2 lovers. I love that so much. It's written by Lady of the Spirit on Tumblr. I will make a link for that page in the show notes. But holy crap. Like, that's the perfect description of what a good enemies to lovers trope is. And what a good enemies to lovers fic is. So good.
I love me a good enemies to lovers, and this may be a controversial opinion, my vice when it comes to that sort of thing is actually a lot less enemies to lovers and a whole lot more like mutual oblivious pining. And it's not mutually exclusive. You can have both, but just I am deeply fond of like these two characters really getting weirdly more and more like intimate in a very platonic way, but being super oblivious and thinking that this is just normal bro stuff, you know?
They could like, never love me the way I love them.
Yeah, gals being pals, and they just they do not key in ever, and I love it. I absolutely love the ridiculous pining.
That reminds me of the trope, I may be evil, but I'm not that evil. I love that when villains do that for some reason. Like, and then that sometimes ends up being the person that falls in love with, like, another person and they were enemies to lovers. Like, you realize there's actually a good side to this person. It's weird. That's the thing that people like. I don't tend to read that kind of stuff, like hero villain ships. I don't tend to read that, but I do like that when I stumble across it. And then my last one, and this was also a Tumblr thing that I found that I immediately loved and put it on the script for this show. Character overextends themselves in a bout of godlike power and immediately passes out afterwards trope. Like, that reminds me of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Every time Aang falls to the ground after showing off his godlike power, I'm an avatar, kind of thing. It's so amazing. But yeah, the person also said on Tumblr, bonus points if right before they collapse into a puddle, the last thing they see is their friends/love interest sprinting towards them.
I love that one, but for me, again, my sweet spot is when you don't know if the godlike power killed them or not. Like,
yes, that
moment.
Too. Especially when it's in, well, okay, I actually like it both ways. If it's the perspective of the person who just did the terrible power thing, or if it's the perspective of the person running towards them. Both are good. What I specifically like is if the person falls over, fade to black, immediate next paragraph is the person running towards them's perspective. Love that shit. That's the best one. By the way, that's by Strawberry Pincushion, which fucking adorable Tumblr username, by the way. Strawberry Pincushion is adorable. So yeah, those are the ones that I could think of that I really, really love. Some of them are very specific, but others are like Hurt Comfort or Magical Realism or past life stuff. Like that's pretty broad strokes kind of thing. So yeah.
So I love me some time travel fix it. Gotta be specific here. It is not future generation gets pulled into the past or past generation gets pulled into the future. It is not time loop. It is specifically time travel fix it, where time travel is used to fix problems and everything is happy and good. I like the other forms of time travel, okay, but there's just something about characters with extensive history going back in time to whatever canon's original status quo is and being different people that just fills me with joy. I don't really care if they're overpowered or not. I don't really care if the plot is a strong element. Like, you go ahead and rehash canon for me. I just want to see these two people that I've gone on a journey with revisiting their mistakes and falling in love and having a happily ever after. It just fills me with joy.
That reminds me of two fics that you've talked about. The Harry Potter fic that you talked about, and then the Naruto fic.
Backslide and Stages of Hope.
There we go. Stages of Hope is great. I read that one. It's so good.
There will probably be more as we go along. It is a vice for me. I love it so very much. I cannot recommend it to anybody because it is ultimately very self-indulgent, but
Why do you think it's self-indulgent?
It doesn't bring strong literary values into the fold. It just fixes things. I'm like, I would love it if there were no problems. Perfect. Next best case, there are still problems, but everybody knows how to fix them before they happen, and it's all happy.
I think it's a lot of character analysis, because the person who's going back, they're a completely different person than the people they're trying to create
I will
through
also,
a better timeline.
also freely admit that I'm a huge sucker for, like, the two people who are shipped get shipped back in time and nobody else is. So they're on a wavelength that nobody else is on, including sometimes each other, but they're still falling in love. I don't know. I'll take almost any combination, but I have an especial fondness for, like, that. It's almost identity porn where nobody really knows who they are, but not quite.
Identity porn.
Yes, that is a different trope.
I haven't heard of that trope. That's cool. Like, the future person somehow switches with the past person and then vice versa. Do you like that too?
I like that okay, but I will freely admit that next generation or future fic has never been my jam. It takes me a while to build up the emotional wherewithal to be like, ah yes, an ending. So just sort of skipping past that to their happy ever after, sort of, it leeches the joy. I'm like, yes, I know they're happy, but I wanted it to be sort of implied so I could imagine whatever I wanted. So my next trope that I love, and this one comes with less overall joy for me, but still I love it. It's shapeshifters, and that can mean werewolves, that can mean people who can shapeshift into animals at will. It isn't really people who turn into other people or inanimate objects, not that I've seen that one much, if ever. It's specifically people and animals. There's just something about the idea of somebody just being like, and now I'm a dog or a cat or a bird or whatever, that I find really amusing. In pretty much any combination, if they're were creatures, I'm like, ah yes, the inherent angst of being a were creature. Or if they just can change, like, and sometimes I'm this other animal. No explanation, it's just who I am. And also the occasional, like, I can turn into an animal, but no one can ever know. For a variety of reasons that people make up. I've read lots of different variations on it, some of them quite strange, but I enjoy the idea of people being animals, animals being people. I think it's cute.
Do you really like werewolf fics?
Yes, for the most part. Werewolf fics come with a lot of tropey baggage. There's just a lot that goes into building up that trope, so sometimes yes, sometimes no. It really depends on how it's written. Third on the list, kid fic. I'm not sure if this is a me thing or a lot of people like it thing, because it seems fairly common, but I really just like it when couples get handed a child through circumstances, whether they produce it themselves or they literally just find a baby or have a baby thrust upon them, or small child. Teenagers are amusing in their own right, but I feel like it's not necessarily a kid fic at that point. And people getting de-aged can sometimes be in the category of kid fic, but that's not really what I'm talking about here. And even necessarily they don't get de-aged, they're just children in the fic, also not quite it. It's literally main characters being handed a baby.
For a really long time, when I heard kid fic, I only thought of the two main characters becoming de-aged or one of them becoming a kid. I guess I just didn't notice the tag that said kid fic on the ones that I've read where the ship gets a kid.
One of my all-time favorite AO3 tags that's actually used fairly commonly is accidental baby acquisition.
Oh, I love that one, actually.
And
yes.
I love fics where they literally just have a doorstep baby or a dumpster baby, and they're really kind of clueless about it, but they're like, but we love and treasure it anyway. There's just something that fills my heart with joy.
Yeah, that's a great trope. Accidental baby acquisition. Oh, fuck. I love that trope so much. Especially if the writer can pick the right name.
Yes,
for the baby.
that is very, very important.
Yeah.
If you name the child something that very clearly you think is pretty cool, but doesn't actually fit in with the rest of the names in canon, I can't do it. That is a deal breaker for me. No matter how adorable your story is, I will just nope right out of there.
The character of the baby needs to have a name that fits tonally and maybe, story-wise, if you want to go into that, with the rest of the cast of the story and with the story itself. I don't know how to describe it better than that, but it just needs to work. If it's not a automatic, wow, I love that name for that baby, then you don't use it. Because if you call a baby Daisy and it's in it's in a really hardcore canon show. Like,
Or
that's
even
completely against the tone.
let's be honest, if you're in an anime fandom and you name the kid Daisy without having appropriate framework around that name, most people are going to be like, everybody else has a Japanese name except for this
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Kid fic is fun, though.
So my next two are fairly specific. One of them is where a character runs away and then comes back and they are much cooler or more competent or more skilled or whatever it is. They basically come back as a very different person. So it's a lot like the time travel Fix It, except for there's no time travel involved. You just have a time skip where you start with your canon character and then they leave and then they come back and they are much better at whatever they were supposed to be doing before. I just really like the implied character work, and I like the idea of having this big backstory that maybe you're privy to, maybe you're not, but just the other characters being more static, I guess, makes for a really fun contrast. I really like having a character come back with a new skill set. I love character work contrasting, like character A went through a whole lot of growth, and now you get to see it directly contrasted with somebody who hasn't had as much or is kind of stuck in the same place character wise. It can be done very badly though, so
Oh, true.
weirdly for this one I don't want it to be a Fix It. I want there to be a little bit more plot. I want there to be strong character work, but also a plot that makes me suspend my disbelief in them coming back and doing these things. My next one is, again, fairly specific. This one is usually done in ships, but I guess you could do it, Jen. So it's character A dies, supposedly. This could be actually they do really die, or no, they just appear to be dead, or character B thinks they're dead, or has been told so. And then character B decides that, you know what, that was the last straw. I'm just gonna burn everything. Me, you, everything. If it is the last thing I do, I will destroy whatever destroyed them. And them just losing it, I really especially love it if it's like character A was more of the tough protector type, and character B was sort of the soft, fluffy one, and character B is still the one who decides that they're gonna take on the world. It's sort of like that moment in an action movie where the cool guy like explodes something and just keeps walking. I'm like, yeah, that, but like with a really sweet character normally. So like imagine that instead of a cool guy in leather, it's like a very small woman in like a daisy polka dotted dress, and she's still the cool guy.
Example, Stucky in the first Captain America film. Bucky apparently dies, and Steve's like, okay, all of Hydra's about to go die. That's cool.
Yes.
I'm about to go do that now.
Exactly.
All right. So I have a middle ground of hate love. Just wanted to put this out there. Audible sharpness trope. When in a movie or a television, it doesn't happen in books. When a person has a sharp weapon and the sound of the sharpness of the weapon comes out at like that wouldn't exist in real life kind of sounds. The Foley artists are putting way too many sharp sounds around this weapon that wouldn't exist in the real world. And it's really fun to find it in a movie or TV show once you understand that that's actually a thing. Like once you know that it's a trope, but it's still annoying.
It's like an Easter egg, but also a really annoying Easter egg.
Yeah, like hurts your eyes Easter egg, but in this way hurts your ears. Let me go into my hates. I only have a couple. I don't tend to remember the things I hate because I don't like to ruminate on the things I hate. That's your $10 bill word of the day. Ruminate. Okay. The take care of your mother while I'm gone trope. I have a bone to pick with whoever decides they want in their television or film or book. A scene where a man is off to war or is off to do something especially dangerous or off to do something in which he might not come back home. And he's at his front doorstep. His wife and his child or children are in the doorway, and he stoops down and puts his hand on his oldest child's shoulder and says, "Take care of your mother while I'm gone," and then leaves. I fucking hate that so much. Like, first of all, the mom's right there, okay? She's not an object, right? The value system must be so out of whack in that family because she's an adult. She's supposed to be taking care of the kids. I think that a way better thing to happen in that instance is like holding his wife and like emotionally asking his wife to take care of their family. Like, that's so much nicer than son, take care of your mother while I'm gone. It's so patriarchal. Like, I know that it's the author trying to be like, the dad is asking the kid to be kind to his mom while he's gone because without him there's no authority figure or something like that. But that's not even a good excuse. Ugh, I don't like it.
I agree with everything you have just said. For what it is worth, my read on it was always, it was less literally like take care of your parent whose actual job is to take care of you, the child, and more like, I know you are anxious, child, and there is no actual practical action you can take in this situation,
Yeah.
nor is there any comfort I can offer you. So I'm going to give you a task which will make my spouse's life easier in some respects to let you feel reassured. And that was the sum total of it. Having
Yes.
said that, when you read any deeper than surface level, you realize that there are way better ways to do that.
Be nice to your siblings.
Or do your
Like, that's
chores,
a
or
thing.
eat your veggies. Yeah, there are other,
Exactly.
like, affirmative action things that they could do.
I guess for me, it really just makes me mad because it's a mom. And it's almost always a son that the
Mm-hmm.
father is talking to. It just annoys the fuck out of me. And there are ways to make it better, like what you said, and that is better.
Anytime there is an adult asking a child to be responsible for an adult, there's something wrong.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so my other trope is the beginning is the ending trope. And I don't think that that's like an actual name. None of these, both of my hates aren't really actual names for the tropes. You can't find them online probably. They're just trying to be descriptive. So the beginning is the ending trope is where in television and also in film, but I don't hate it so much in film. I'm fine with it in film. When the authors of a TV show don't know what to do as a framing device, so they just end up doing the beginning is the ending trope, where at the beginning of the episode, they show part of the ending of the episode. And then there's like the record scratch where it's like, I'm in pretty big trouble, aren't I? And then they start the episode at what would have been the beginning, and then they get all the way up to the point where they first showed that scene at the beginning of the episode, and then it's actually different. It feels like a cop out. Feels like a lazy writer's decision. Like, this episode isn't interesting enough. I decided to use this framework for this episode because otherwise it would just be a bottle episode or just be an episode nobody would remember. But to me, I hate it. I love linear storytelling. I also love like crazy storytelling. Interstellar is really interesting to me. But when you're showing the ending of an episode first and then getting up to that point and then the rest of it, it's like, I already know what's going to happen. Why would I invest any emotional energy into the rest of the episode? It's not a progressive story anymore. It's a stunted episode, in my opinion. It annoys the fuck out of me.
I have to ask then, does Megamind bug you?
See, okay, that's what I meant. Really bugs me in TV shows because it marks a lazy writer. But when it comes to film, because Ratatouille and Megamind are two movies I can think of right now that do that, in film, they have put, because they're allowed to, a lot more energy and thought into the script. When it feels like a crutch in a TV show episode, that's when I hate it. But when you can tell that they really figured out, because in Megamind it works. He's almost meta. He understands himself really well, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love Megamind. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. And Ratatouille is also fantastic, but it makes sense within the story. It's a contained film. With TV, there's a lot more episodes. I know somebody would say it's a contained TV episode. It's just that it's not something I would have to go back to again if I didn't want to. A lot of TV shows do that. And it's so annoying to me. There's always that one episode where they use the beginning as the ending trope. I like it in movies when it's done well. I hate it in TV even if it's done well.
Do you think it's a long form, short form thing, or is it just a
It's
convention
just
of
it's
each
just better.
medium?
It feels more natural to do that in a film because of the medium. Yeah, I think it is medium thing. It's a medium thing.
Hmm.
What are your hates?
My hates, I feel like, are relatively simple, and I've seen lots of people who have the same sort of opinion. My first one is, I hate love triangles, and probably not for the reasons you're thinking. I hate love triangles firstly because a triangle implies a relationship between two of the partners that generally does not actually exist within most love triangles. Like, all three of them actually have to have a relationship with each other, and it is implied that that relationship is romantic by dint of the trope itself. So there's gonna be a queer relationship somewhere in there, if not all of them, and it bugs me when it's like, no, only the two heterosexual ones count if it is a traditional male or female versus two of the opposite.
Bella, Edward, Jacob solidarity.
Yeah, it bugs me because that's not a triangle, that's just an angle. It's just a point.
It's a love bent line.
Which, I mean, I also hate the fact that the way that most love triangles are constructed, especially if the point is a woman, is that it's framed as a competition between the men, which inherently implies that the woman doesn't have a say. And I hate it.
Yeah.
It's not just that she's objectified, it's that she's a prize. She has no
Yeah.
agency. I'm like, what if she's in love with a third party? Or what if she really does like one better than the other and just arbitrarily is like, that's the one I'm romantically interested in? By leveling the playing field for these two romantic competitors, a lot of times instead of having an equal attachment to both, they just remove the angles, whatever they are, agency, and I hate that. In addition to the fact that the two that don't have a romantic relationship, they don't, and that's weird. I'm like, you're spending all this time on this rivalry. Are you sure that you don't like each other at least a little bit? Like, you're spending more time with each other than you are with whoever you're pursuing.
Yeah. I think the best author who did that in YA, the triangle that isn't a triangle or the love bent line, was Suzanne Collins in The Hunger Games. I think she did a really good job with the whole, this isn't really a triangle, but people like to tout it as such with the Gale, Peeta, Katniss
And
triangle.
it also helped that at least part of the reason why that love triangle worked is because, at least from my memory, and correct me if I'm wrong, it has been many years, is that Katniss never really looked at it that way. She was like,
No.
I potentially have two romantic interests that I have to choose between. And honestly, they weren't really in competition with each other because they were in two completely different parts of both society and life.
And her life. Yeah. I also found a really crazy post today. So there's this theory that Jacob wanted to be around Bella because his wolf imprinting thing was kind of making him pique his interest because of one of Bella's eggs.
I am laughing because I've seen this.
But other people have been like, why wasn't he horny for Edward? Because then that meant that there's sperm in Edward that he was also, and what if he was and we just didn't know? So I think that that's like an amazing love triangle. It's perfect. Poor Jacob, he was probably very confused. And what if they had a boy? Anyway, what's your next one?
My next one that I really, really hate is miscommunication for dramatic purposes specifically. What I mean by that is it's when your characters are not communicating in a way that furthers the drama or the angst or the pining or whatever. But to be completely honest, if they just sat down for 20 minutes, you would sort of cut through all of that and it wouldn't be a problem anymore, which ties in a little bit with my next hate. But just the idea that those stories where you're like, you literally could sit down in a kitchen for less than an hour and sort out your problems and that would be that, and there's no more dramatic tension, bugs me. It feels lazy. Like you are spending so much time making them coincidentally not talk that I'm no longer able to suspend my disbelief. At some point these people would have had a conversation. They're in love, right?
I also hate it when like they're talking and they're about to get to the point in which they needed to get to during the conversation, and then somebody else comes in and distracts them. Yeah. And then they just don't continue the conversation afterward.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous and unrealistic.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I can't remember, it's a cartoon joke, gag, I guess, where somebody's trying to say something and then there's a loud noise that goes over it, so you, the audience, can't hear, and sometimes the characters can't hear, and they try again and there's another loud noise over the top. It's like, okay, this is just goofy now. Ironically, I like miscommunication when it was intended to be goofy. I've read hilarious fics where the entire premise is that there is a misunderstanding that is at least halfway hilarious. And everybody understands that and they're trying to correct it, and it just sort of keeps the gag rolling. So It's just specifically when it sort of is gratuitous miscommunication. And they're doing it because drama. So, like I said, that the idea of that dramatic miscommunication 100% ties in with my next hate, which is the idiot plot. The logical extreme of dramatic miscommunication is an idiot plot, which idiot plots are basically plots which, if everybody were not an idiot, the plot would not work. I don't have a good example off the top of my head, but it really is what it sounds like. You have to dumb down your characters through a variety of means to a point where you get the plot to do what you want it to do, regardless of their characterization or skills or emotional content. And this bugs me for a lot of the same reasons that dramatic miscommunication does, which is if anybody had common sense for 5 seconds, your story would sort of not work at all. And that feels lazy to me. I mean, I understand there's a certain amount of fragility to the premise of a lot of stories, fic in particular, where sometimes you're trying to keep a canon characterization while also having them do whatever you want them to do. But in this case, it's stretching the bounds of believability. If I am screaming at the characters the whole time, just do the thing or sit down, not my favorite. I like to assume a certain degree of intelligence in all of the characters I love.
Yeah. Well, looks like we got through all of our tropes that we either love or are okay with or hate. Maybe
Nah,
not all of them, just because
there is always more.
it's time for Rec Corner! My rec this week is titled Eleutheromania by JewFlexive. It is a Padme Anakin fanfic, but they're not necessarily the main character. It's actually an OC, a young slave girl. It delves a lot deeper into the whole world of slavery and societal ethics in Star Wars than most Star Wars movies tend to do. And if they do, it feels pandering in the Star Wars films. This does not feel pandering. It's really good. I would recommend reading it.
So I thought I would rec one that has one of the tropes that I like that I haven't necessarily wrecked before. So this one is Red in Tooth and Claw by Poison Ivory. And it is a Marvel fanfic, but it's Daredevil specifically. It's based on the Netflix series, so it's after Matt and Foggy split, and Matt comes back and is doing Daredevil kind of solo. But in this world, there are shifters, and Matt is one of them, but it's sort of secret. So it's a really cute story where Matt ends up getting hunted by Kraven, who is a Marvel character who hunts other superheroes sometimes big game. He's a villain, sort of minor, sort of goofy, but he ends up showing up and trying to hunt him down, and he ends up sort of making it so that Matt keeps being forced into being a cat, so he'll shift into a cat and then to a man, and he gets sort of stuck as a cat at least part of the time. It's really, really cute because he ends up sort of making up with Foggy. It is Matt, Foggy as the ship. You get to meet the rest of the Defenders crew. So Jessica Jones and the Iron Fist and what is his name? It is the
Luke Cage.
Luke Cage.
Right?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. No.
And they all are also shifters, and they're sort of goofy and want to be friends with him, and Matt is like, no, I am alone, and also Foggy doesn't like me, so I have to be alone.
Man, he really is the Batman of Marvel, isn't he? God.
He very much is. But it's a really cute story that if you like shifters and you like Matt Foggy, then you'll really like this. It's cute.
All right, I think we're done.
So I guess we will see y'all next week
on Fangirls Anonymous. Bye!